Hi there, and welcome back to the garden. I'm Eleanor. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Have you ever wondered whether your garden is actually helping the birds, bees, and butterflies around you, or just sitting there looking pretty? It's a question I think about often, and it's exactly what led me to today's video. Here's something that took me years to fully appreciate: the plants that evolved right here in North America alongside our local birds, bees, and butterflies do something that even the most beautiful imported ornamentals simply cannot. They provide the exact food, shelter, and habitat that our local wildlife has depended on for thousands upon thousands of years. A native plant isn't just pretty, it's doing real, quiet, meaningful work every single day, supporting an entire web of life right in your own front yard. And here's the wonderful surprise for anyone worried that native might mean wild and unkempt. These plants are, without exception, also genuinely beautiful. Many of them are just as striking, just as colorful, just as garden-worthy as anything you'd find at a conventional nursery. They simply come with the added bonus of being perfectly adapted to your local climate and soil, and of feeding the wildlife that makes a garden feel truly alive. So today I'm sharing 10 native plants that bring real beauty to your front yard while doing genuine good for your local ecosystem, supporting birds, bees, butterflies, and more. And do stay to the very end, because our last plant blooms at a time of year that will genuinely surprise you. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and if you love an easy, beautiful, wildlife-friendly yard, tap that subscribe button. It truly helps this little channel grow. All right. Let's plant something that gives back. Let's begin with one of the most recognizable, most beloved native perennials of all, purple coneflower, or echinacea. This is a true prairie native, and it shows in everything about how it grows: tough, resilient, and generous with its blooms. Those classic purple-pink daisy-like flowers with their raised, spiky centers bloom from early summer right through fall, and they're an absolute magnet for native bees and butterflies throughout that entire long season. As a bonus, once the flowers finish and the seed heads dry, goldfinches flock to feast on the seeds right through fall and winter, so this one plant genuinely feeds wildlife across 3 full seasons. Being native to the tallgrass prairies of North America, it's extraordinarily tough, thriving in full sun, tolerating heat, drought, and poor soil with real ease, since it evolved for exactly those conditions long before any of us were gardening here. For your design, plant it in generous drifts for the biggest pollinator impact and resist the urge to deadhead in fall. Leave those seed heads standing for the birds. My tip: choose the straight native species or a cultivar close to it, rather than some of the heavily bred double-flowered varieties, since those elaborate blooms can actually be harder for pollinators to access. Sometimes the simplest, most classic form serves wildlife best: beautiful, tough, and feeding wildlife 3 seasons running. Purple coneflower is a native cornerstone. Now let's add some native movement and structure with number 2. Number 2 brings genuine native texture and movement to your yard, along with a fall color show that rivals any tree: little bluestem. This native prairie grass forms neat, upright clumps of blue-green foliage through summer, hence the name, and then, as fall arrives, it undergoes a truly spectacular transformation, turning warm shades of copper, russet, and mahogany red that glow in the autumn light. Fluffy, silvery seed heads appear atop the foliage, catching the low fall sun beautifully and providing seeds for native sparrows and other small birds through the colder months. As a true prairie native, little bluestem is remarkably tough and low maintenance, thriving in full sun and poor, dry soil where many other plants would struggle. It evolved specifically for exactly those lean prairie conditions. For your design, use it in groups for that gorgeous fall color display, or as a native alternative to ornamental grasses you might already know, bringing the very same movement and texture with the added benefit of supporting local birds and insects. My tip: leave the dried foliage and seed heads standing through winter rather than cutting back in fall. Not only does it provide crucial food and shelter for wildlife through the coldest months, but that copper-colored winter silhouette is genuinely beautiful against snow. Tough, colorful, and feeding the birds all winter. Little Bluestem brings native texture home. Now let's add a fragrant native beloved by hummingbirds with number 3. Number 3 brings fragrant, lavender-colored blooms and a genuine pollinator party to your yard. Wild bergamot, the native species of Monarda. This native wildflower sends up shaggy, lavender-purple flower heads atop aromatic, minty-scented foliage, blooming through the heart of summer. It's an absolute magnet for native bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds alike, and here's a lovely bonus. As a member of the mint family, its leaves have long been used to make a fragrant herbal tea, connecting it to a genuine history of native plant use that predates ornamental gardening entirely. As a true prairie native, it's tough and adaptable, thriving in full sun to part shade and tolerating a range of soil conditions, including the poor, dry soil that defeats fussier plants. For your design, plant it in groups where that wonderful fragrance and pollinator activity can be fully enjoyed, ideally somewhere you'll walk past often enough to brush the aromatic foliage. My tip, give it good air circulation to help prevent the powdery mildew that can sometimes affect the mint family in humid climates, and consider dividing established clumps every few years to keep them vigorous and to share with fellow native plant gardeners. Fragrant, pollinator-friendly, and steeped in genuine native history, wild bergamot is a wonderful addition. Now let's add a native tree that gives you spring blooms, summer fruit, and fall color all in one, with number 4. Number 4 might be the single hardest-working native plant on this entire list, because it genuinely gives you something beautiful in every season: Serviceberry or Hydrangea. In early spring, before most trees have even leafed out, Serviceberry bursts into a cloud of delicate white blossoms, one of the very first big flowering displays of the entire gardening year, an early feast for native pollinators just emerging from winter. Then, in early summer, those flowers give way to small, sweet, blueberry-like fruits that are genuinely edible for us and absolutely beloved by birds. Cedar waxwings, robins, and many others will visit a fruiting serviceberry with real enthusiasm. Then in fall, the foliage turns brilliant shades of orange and red, giving you a third spectacular season of beauty. Spring flowers, summer fruit, fall color, that's an extraordinary amount of value from a single native tree. It's wonderfully adaptable, tolerating full sun to part shade and a range of soil conditions, and many varieties stay a modest, manageable size, perfect for even a smaller front yard. For your design, use it as a genuine focal point specimen tree. Remember our design principle about choosing one strong anchor, since Serviceberry offers more year-round interest than almost any small tree you could choose. My tip, if you'd like to actually taste those berries yourself before the birds get them all, keep a close eye starting in early summer. They ripen quickly and the birds move fast, so a little friendly competition is part of the fun. Spring blooms, summer fruit, fall color, Serviceberry earns its place as a true four-season native star. Now let's add a native shrub that offers real value for wildlife and shade, with number 5. Number 5 brings us back to a genuinely beloved shrub, but today with a focus on its true native, wildlife-supporting roots, Oakleaf hydrangea. This is one of relatively few hydrangeas that's actually native to North America, specifically to the southeastern United States, and choosing the straight native species, rather than some of the more heavily bred cultivars, means you're getting a shrub that genuinely evolved alongside and continues to support local pollinators and wildlife. You still get all the beauty we love, those large cone-shaped white flower clusters in summer that age to soft pink, those distinctive oak-shaped leaves that turn brilliant burgundy and red in fall, and handsome peeling bark for winter interest, 4 full seasons of beauty from one native shrub, and the bees genuinely benefit from those blooms in a way that some heavily bred double-flowered varieties don't offer as generously. It thrives in part shade and rich, well-drained soil, making it a wonderful native option for that shadier side of the house where sun-loving prairie natives wouldn't perform as well. For your design, use it as an anchor shrub in a partly shaded bed, giving structure and year-round interest while genuinely supporting local pollinators when it blooms. My tip: when shopping, look specifically for the species name rather than a heavily modified cultivar if supporting pollinators is your priority. A nursery tag that simply says Oakleaf Hydrangea without a fancy cultivar name is often closer to the straight native form. Beautiful, four-season, and genuinely native, Oakleaf Hydrangea does double duty. Now let's add another true prairie grass with real wildlife value with number 6. Number 6 brings tall, graceful, genuinely native movement to your yard, along with real habitat value, switchgrass or panicum. This was once one of the dominant grasses of the vast North American tallgrass prairie, and it brings that same wild, graceful, swaying presence to a home garden. It grows in tall, upright clumps, topped in late summer with airy, delicate seed heads that catch the light beautifully and sway gently in the slightest breeze. In fall, the foliage often turns warm gold, burgundy, or deep red, depending on the variety, giving you real seasonal color alongside that constant movement. Beyond its beauty, switchgrass provides genuine habitat. Small birds use it for shelter and nesting material, and the seeds feed native sparrows and other birds through fall and winter, exactly as it always has on the wild prairie. It's remarkably tough and adaptable, thriving in full sun and tolerating both dry and even seasonally wet soil, which makes it more flexible than many other prairie natives. For your design, use it toward the back of a bed for height and movement, or as a native alternative to ornamental grasses you might already be considering, with the same graceful presence and real habitat value built in. My tip: leave it standing through winter for the birds, and cut it back to a few inches only in very early spring, right before new growth begins. Tall, graceful, and quietly supporting local birds, switchgrass brings prairie movement home. Now let's add a charming native for shadier, woodland edge spots with number 7. Number 7 brings delicate, whimsical, nodding blooms to a shadier native garden, and hummingbirds absolutely adore it: wild Columbine. This charming native perennial produces distinctive, nodding flowers in red and yellow, with elegant, backward-pointing spurs that hold nectar, a shape perfectly suited to a hummingbird's long bill, and one of the very earliest native nectar sources they rely on in spring, right as they return from migration. The delicate, almost fern-like foliage adds a soft texture to a woodland edge bed even after the flowers finish. It's naturally at home in part shade to dappled woodland light, thriving in the kind of soil found at a forest's edge, rich and well-drained, with a bit of natural leaf litter. For your design, tuck it into that partly shaded spot near a tree or along the shadier edge of your yard, where its delicate, nodding blooms can be discovered up close by both you and visiting hummingbirds. My tip: wild Columbine self-seeds gently in the right conditions. So let a few spent flowers go to seed, and you'll often find charming new seedlings appearing nearby in seasons to come, spreading that early hummingbird nectar source naturally through your garden. Delicate, whimsical, and an early hummingbird favorite, wild Columbine brings woodland charm. Now let's add a true native sunflower that returns year after year with number 8. Number 8 brings the cheerful, sunny presence of sunflowers, but as a true perennial native rather than the familiar annual variety, native sunflower or helianthus. Unlike the giant single-stalk sunflowers you might picture, many native perennial sunflower species form generous branching clumps covered in dozens of smaller, cheerful golden yellow blooms from late summer into fall, exactly the season when many other flowers are winding down. And because it's perennial, you plant it once and it returns reliably every year, rather than needing to be replanted from seed like its annual cousin. It's an outstanding late-season nectar source for bees and butterflies fueling up before winter or migration, and the seed heads that follow feed goldfinches and other birds right through fall. It thrives in full sun and tolerates a range of soil conditions, true to its tough prairie heritage, though some taller varieties benefit from a bit of support or a sunny spot with room to spread. For your design, plant it toward the back or middle of a native bed, where its cheerful late-season gold can extend your yard's color right into the cooler months. My tip: Many native sunflower species do spread by underground rhizomes and can become vigorous over time, so give it room to roam or plan to divide and share the extras with fellow gardeners every few years. Cheerful, late-blooming, and a genuine perennial, native sunflower extends your season with real native roots. Now let's add a truly unusual native that blooms at a time you'd never expect, with number 9. And here it is. Number 9, the plant I promised you at the very start, the one that blooms at a time of year that will genuinely surprise you, witch hazel or hamamelis. Here's what makes witch hazel so extraordinary. Depending on the species, it blooms either in very late fall, after most everything else has finished for the year, or remarkably in the very dead of winter, sometimes even blooming right through a light snowfall. The flowers themselves are wonderfully unusual, with thin ribbon-like spidery petals in warm yellow, orange, or red, releasing a delicate, sweet fragrance at exactly the moment when there is genuinely nothing else blooming in the entire garden. To find a shrub in flower in the dead of winter feels like a small miracle every single time. As a native woodland understory shrub, it thrives in part shade and rich, well-drained soil, and it's remarkably low maintenance once established, often living for many decades. For your design, plant it where you'll actually see it during the colder months, near a window, along a path you walk in winter, so that unexpected, fragrant bloom doesn't go unnoticed during the season when you need it most. My tip: witch hazel needs very little pruning at all. Simply remove any dead or crossing branches after flowering, and otherwise let it grow into its naturally graceful, spreading form. Blooming when nothing else dares, fragrant and a genuine native surprise, witch hazel is a true winter treasure. Now for our 10th and final plant, a tough, elegant native that brings real structure. Here it is. And here is number 10, a tough, elegant, long-lived native perennial that brings real structure and striking blue color to your front yard, wild indigo or baptisia. This native prairie perennial forms substantial shrub-like mounds of blue-green foliage, topped in late spring with tall spikes of pea-like flowers, most classically in a striking indigo blue, though purple, white, and yellow varieties exist too. After flowering, it develops distinctive dark seed pods that add sculptural interest and even make a pleasant rattling sound in the breeze, genuinely useful for dried arrangements too. Wild indigo has a deep, substantial taproot, much like the milkweed we discussed in an earlier video, which makes it remarkably drought-tolerant once established and very long-lived. A single plant can thrive for decades, slowly forming an impressively large, shrub-like presence that anchors a native border beautifully. It thrives in full sun and well-drained soil, and being a member of the pea family, it actually improves the soil around it by fixing nitrogen, quietly benefiting whatever you plant nearby. For your design, use it as a substantial anchor plant in a sunny native border, giving it plenty of room to reach its full, impressive, mature size over the years. My tip: because of that deep taproot, wild indigo strongly resists being moved once established, so choose its permanent spot thoughtfully from the very start. But that same taproot is exactly what makes it so wonderfully drought-tolerant and long-lived once it's settled in. Tough, elegant, and quietly improving your soil, wild indigo is a magnificent, long-lived native anchor. Now let's bring it all together. And there you have it, 10 native plants that bring real beauty to your front yard while genuinely supporting the birds, bees, and butterflies around you, from the classic purple coneflower all the way to that wonderfully unexpected winter-blooming witch hazel. Plant even a few of these, and you're not just building a beautiful garden, you're building a small, living piece of habitat, right where a parking strip or a plain lawn might have been instead. Here's the thought I'd love to leave you with. Every native plant you add is a small act of genuine care, not just for how your yard looks, but for the whole web of life around it. That feels like real, meaningful gardening to me. So tell me down in the comments, had you thought about whether your garden was helping local wildlife, like I asked at the very start? And which of these 10 native plants are you most excited to add? Share it with your growing zone, since native plant selection really does vary by region, and I'd love to help point you toward the very best natives for exactly where you live. And do go say a warm hello to a fellow native plant gardener down there in the comments. This little community grows richer, and so does the world around us, every time one of us chooses a native. I've got more wonderful ideas coming your way soon, so make sure you're subscribed with that bell turned on so you never miss a video. Until next time, this is Eleanor. Keep your hands in the soil and your heart in the garden. Take care now. Bye-bye.